The fire within Elle Morgan. Elle Morgan gripped the straps of her faded black backpack a little tighter as she crossed the courtyard of Ashwood High. The wind tugged at the loose tendrils of her curly hair that had escaped her ponytail, and she squinted slightly against the afternoon glare bouncing off the school's polished glass facade. At 16, this wasn't her first new school. Not even close. Her mom's career with a fast-growing cybersecurity firm meant constant relocations. New cities, new homes, new faces, and always new challenges. But Elle never let it get to her. She had been raised to adapt, trained to endure, and taught by someone who never accepted weakness not in others, and certainly not in himself. Her uncle, Darius Cole, wasn't just a name whispered around dinner tables. He was a retired Special Forces legend, once hired by private security firms that paid more in a week than most made in a year. He also happened to be her godfather. Since Elle was 8 years old, he'd been training her in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, not for sport, but for survival. "This world isn't always fair," he used to say, handing her a set of gloves. "But you've got to be ready when it forgets to play nice." Ashwood High looked like a nice place. Its red brick buildings stood proud under towering oaks, the quad filled with students chatting, laughing, scrolling through their phones. But Elle knew better than to trust the surface. It didn't take long to figure out who ruled the school. A group of seniors called themselves the Circle, like a twisted version of royalty. At the center was Grayson Locke, a senior with Beach Boy looks, smug confidence, and the arrogance that came from generations of privilege. He drove a souped-up Jeep, wore designer sneakers even to gym class, and always had a crowd around him too in particular. Nolan Banks, the brooding football captain, and Tyson Velez, a wiry troublemaker with a GoPro always strapped to his backpack. For the first 2 weeks, Elle stayed off their radar. She ate lunch behind the auditorium, memorized classroom layouts to avoid known circle haunts, and kept her participation in class just above minimal. She wasn't afraid, just tactical. Invisible was safer. That illusion shattered one Tuesday outside the chemistry lab. Elle, arms loaded with textbooks and a sketch pad, turned a corner too quickly and collided shoulder first with Nolan. Her books tumbled. He sneered down at her like she was a stain on his sneakers. "Watch where you're going, freshman," he barked, not realizing she was a junior. Elle knelt quietly, collecting her things without making eye contact. She knew his kind. They thrived on dominance, on loud victories over quiet targets. "Ignore them," Darius always said. "Give them nothing." But Nolan wasn't finished. "What's the rush?" he said with a mocking grin. "Knitting club's gonna leave without you." Elle stood, met his eyes briefly, then turned and walked away. Not a word, not a reaction. By the time lunch rolled around, whispers had already twisted the story. According to Tyson, who naturally caught the scene on video, Elle had stared Nolan down like a psycho before storming off. "She thinks she's better than us," Grayson said over his burger, watching her from across the cafeteria. "Might be time someone taught her how things work around here." That's when it began. Sticky notes covered her locker the next day, obscene drawings, cruel words. Someone poured orange soda into her backpack during PE, soaking her notes and shorting out her calculator. But Elle didn't flinch. She carried herself with quiet defiance, never giving them the reaction they craved. "You don't give bullies the show," Darius had told her once after a bruising sparring session. "You give them silence and steel." But bullies don't like to be ignored. One afternoon, after Spanish class, Elle exited into an almost empty corridor. Grayson, Nolan, and Tyson were waiting. They leaned casually against the lockers like they owned the place. She considered turning back, but that would be surrender. And Elle Morgan didn't retreat. She kept walking. Grayson stepped forward, cocky smile in place. "Hey, new girl," he said, blocking her path. "You've been acting like you don't understand how this school works." Elle gave him a blank stare. "Excuse me." He reached out as if to stop her no real force, just the casual entitlement of someone who thought intimidation was his birthright. But then he did something stupid. With an exaggerated smirk, he raised his hand, palm open, aiming for a humiliating tap across her face. In that moment, Elle didn't think. Her body just reacted. She ducked under his arm, spun, and twisted his wrist sharply behind his back. Her foot swept his leg, sending him crashing to the floor. Gasps echoed down the hall as his friends froze. She stood over him, calm, composed. "If you ever try that again," she said, her voice cold and deliberate, "you'll be brushing your teeth with your left hand." Then she turned and walked away. Unbeknownst to her, someone in the hallway had captured the whole thing. Within hours, it was circulating across student group chats. By morning, she wasn't invisible anymore. Students who had ignored her began to stare as she passed. Some looked impressed, others wary. Teachers took a second glance when they called her name. Even Tyson, who usually filmed humiliations for laughs, kept his camera off. The circle didn't show up that day. At lunch, Elle walked past their table empty for the first time in months and sat by the windows. She poked at her food with her fork. She didn't want popularity. She wanted peace. But as Darius always said, life doesn't care what you want. It cares what you're willing to fight for. That afternoon, Jenna Rowe, a soft-spoken junior with auburn hair, approached her table. "Mind if I join you?" "El Schwigid. Free country." They ate in silence for a few minutes before Jenna leaned in. "That was incredible. What you did." "I didn't plan it," Elle replied. "I just reacted." Jenna nodded. "Still, you did what none of us ever could." Word spread. Students approached Elle throughout the week asking for advice, complimenting her, offering respect in a dozen quiet ways. Then Friday came. Grayson returned. Elle was at her locker when she heard his approach. She didn't turn, just waited. "Hey," he said, his voice more subdued. She closed her locker and looked at him. "I was wrong," he said. "What I did, it wasn't okay." Elle watched him. She didn't speak right away. Finally, she nodded. "An apology's a start. But it's not enough." He looked down. "I know." He left quietly, and something inside Elle eased. The following Monday, Ms. Bishop, the school counselor, caught her between classes. "We've been thinking of starting a girls' self-defense club," she said with a smile. "I hear you might be the perfect person to lead it." Elle was stunned. "Me? You already have," Bishop replied, "whether you meant to or not." That night, Elle sat beside Darius on the back porch. The sky was painted with lavender and gold. "You ever feel like people are watching you for all the wrong reasons?" she asked. He chuckled. "Every damn day. But you don't let that stop you. You use it. I don't know if I want to be the face of anything." "You don't have to be a face. Just a light." That Friday, Elle stood in the school gym with a dozen nervous girls. Some wore sneakers and jeans, others gym clothes. Jenna stood beside her. "Hi," Elle said. "I'm not here to make you fighters. I'm here to help you remember you don't have to be afraid." They trained. They stumbled. They laughed. Over the weeks, more students joined. Even teachers peeked in. And one day, Nolan appeared at the door, shifting awkwardly. "You looking to get pinned?" Elle teased. He smiled sheepishly. "Ms. Bishop said you needed a sparring partner." She handed him pads. He helped. He took falls. And slowly, the lines began to blur. Respect replaced fear. Understanding replaced silence. And Elle, who had once just wanted to survive, began to thrive. By spring, the club had doubled in size. Girls learned not just how to defend their bodies, but their space, their voice, their dignity. Graduation came with Texas heat shimmering in air. When Elle's name was called, the cheer that erupted shook the bleachers. Darius was waiting beyond the crowd, arms open wide. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. Elle looked out across the field, remembering the fear she once carried into that school. "I'm proud of me too," she whispered back. That night, under the stars, surrounded by friends, laughter, and peace, she realized, maybe the fight wasn't what defined you. Maybe how you stood knit hats what made you unforgettable. And Elle Morgan? She wasn't going anywhere. She was home. She was ready. She was the fire they never saw coming.